Good morning, Americans. This is your favorite alien and Bubba here on the morning of Saturday, May 22nd, 2021. Stand by for commentary. Well, here we are, end of another week. We finally got a ceasefire in the Middle East, and today's commentary is on American hate. And boy, do you have a lot of that. Represented by the beat up that poor Jewish guy got in New York City. You pro-Palestinian people, and you anti-Jewish people, and you pro-Jewish people, the ones that go pro-Israel and the ones that go pro-Palestinians. To you, I'm talking about both of you are wrong, okay, in doing this demonstrations. What are you demonstrating for? Both parties are wrong here, Israel and the Palestinians. And here's the problem. The countries that you have in there are all artificially created. Israel is just a namesake. Egypt is just a namesake. Jordan, it was created out of Palestine. All these countries in there have never existed. Egypt ceased to exist in 31 BC when Cleopatra was defeated by Octavian or Augustus, either one, whichever you want to call him. And Egypt therefore became a province of the Roman Empire and ceased to exist forever. It lost its language, its people, and everything went down with Cleopatra. Israel hasn't existed as a nation since Israel proper, 722 BC, and the province of Judea in 586 BC, when they got defeated by the Babylonians. The Assyrians defeated Israel in 722 BC. Egypt was established as a nation country by the British in 1922 under British protectorate control. And by that time, the land that was Egypt was occupied by the Muslims after the Byzantine Empire ceased to exist, and they took it over in 627 AD. Then the Mameluks took it over, then the Seljuk Turks, and later on the Ottoman Empire. Then the Mameluks fought them back and created Cairo, which was not Egyptian, okay? It was still Muslim. The British brought back the country or the notion of Egypt in 1922. And they kept it till 1952 when Gamal Abdel Nasser decided to throw out the British imposed king Farouk. Yeah. And well, nationalized the Suez Canal. Boy, that took the British by surprise, didn't it? Yes. Now the British, they are responsible for the two mishaps and messes of the 20th century. India, 1947, partition. Palestine, 1948, partition. The resolution, or Resolution 181 by the United Nations for the Palestine partition in 1948. It was never put into effect because when the vote was done to partition, a war broke out. Therefore, Resolution 181 never went into the books. It's just a figment of somebody's imagination. After the war in 1949, the United Nations decided to accept the borders that were done in 1949. Unbeknownst to them, they didn't ask the Palestinians that got displaced, and they didn't ask the Jewish who were fighting an all-front war. I mean, that was an all-front war because you had every Arab country in the region had declared war on them. And somehow they came out victorious in 1949. with a grudge because they still had East Jerusalem that belonged to the Muslims, and it became under Jordanian control. Palestinians didn't like that because they were under Jordanian control, a country that they didn't even know nothing about. All they knew is the family that controlled Jordan was related to the Iraqis back then. They were cousins or something like that. And Egypt controlled the Gaza Strip. Yeah. So when Gamal Adair Nasser told the British to suck it and get out in 1952, then you had Gamal Adair Nasser controlling the southern front of Israel and the Gaza Strip, which caused a problem for Israel. In 1956, Israel decided to join the French and the British because, well, we got to get back our Suez Canal. And Israel wanted some security with the Sinai. Yeah. Then the Americans, under President Dwight David Eisenhower, came in to view this. And this is what I'm saying to you Americans who have hate on both sides. Okay, I'll get to you in a second. But that created a problem. Because when he forced Israel to withdraw back and the French and the British to withdraw, that left a bad taste in everybody's mouth except the Americans, which has cost you problems and money ever since 1956. 11 years later, 1967, Israel decided, I want the Sinai back. And it took it back. It took the Suez Canal. So from 1967 to 1975, the Suez Canal was inactive with all those ships that were sunk in it. And Israel controlled the east bank of the Suez Canal. Oh yeah, you didn't know that, did you? Yes. Then the 1973 Yom Kippur War, where Anwar Sadat decided to give Israel a taste of their own medicine on their own holiday, Yom Kippur. But he had told the Russians to go stick it, so he didn't have any support there a year earlier. And the other countries, Syria and Jordan, went along, but they got more bloody than they did in the 67 war. Did Jordan gain back the West Bank? No. And Jordan had already thrown out the Palestinians that were in their proper territory back in 1970. So they went to the West Bank. So Jordan really didn't want to go into this war because they had enough of the Palestinians. They were causing a problem in their own country. The Gaza Strip, they were always a pain in the ass. And Egypt had a heck of a time controlling the Gaza Strip. So by 1973, when the war ended, Anwar Sadat was left with his Third Army surrounded. And Egypt could have crossed the Suez Canal at any time and invade Egypt proper. Ooh, that would have been fun, wouldn't it? Yeah. So they decided to cool it, and then under the Israelis didn't like the Prime Minister Golda Meir because she was caught with her pants down. So they threw her out and put Mohammed Begin. Oh, what a mistake that was, huh? Israel? Yeah. You guys haven't forgotten Mr. Begin, have you? I don't think so. And Anwar Sadat took advantage of Mr. Begin. And he wanted to open up the Suez Canal because he needed money. Big time. And Israel was having problems with the Sinai. It was costing them a lot of money, and they were getting money from America. But there was a lot of anti-Israelis here in the United States. So they gave up the Sinai with the treaty that they did with Egypt in 1977. And the disengagement that happened in 1979. Therefore, Egypt got control of the Sinai, got control of the border with Gaza, and eventually, Israel also came into a treaty with Jordan because Jordan wanted their pain in the ass Palestinians to quit messing with their border. They'd already thrown them out in 1970 under King Hussein. He had enough. And I understand Jordanians. I mean, those Palestinians can be a pain in the yeah. Okay. So here we're left with the two messes that were caused in 1948, the three wars since then, and the hatred. And I don't see anybody from the Jewish side or the Palestinian side, along with brokers from Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia, because you got another partner in here, Iran, who is manipulating Hamas and cashing Hamas. Iran's got their own situation here, Americans, and this is what you got to understand, especially Khalid Omar and OIOC. Yeah. Which you guys don't understand the thing over there. If Hamas gets what they want under this ceasefire, and this altercation was manipulated by Iran because they wanted to find out a couple of things. Number one, how bad is Israel willing to go? Netanyahu showed them he's willing to destroy Gaza. And I don't blame him. I would be willing to destroy Gaza. It's nothing but a pain in the neck. But you notice that he had restraint on the West Bank. The West Bankers, you Palestinians over there, have a different way of thinking than the Gaza guys, because the Gaza guys are controlled by Hamas. The Palestinian Authority is a joke. Abu Abbas is a joke. He's controlled by Hamas. But you Palestinians on the West Bank, you can sit down with the Jordanians and the Egyptians and say, this is what we want. We want a Switzerland-type country here in the West Bank, where our security depends on the world. We have no army. We don't want Hamas to defend us. We don't want the Palestinian Authority to speak for us. We want to speak as our own West Bank Palestinians. And look what you got to offer. You sit on a breach of land that the world wants. It's a world land. You got three religions that hold that sacred where you sit at, okay, on the West Bank. There's a lot of history or stories that were made on that piece of land by all three major religions. And all three of them should look at you guys and say, we shouldn't mess with them. Let them live peacefully there, and everybody have the right to go and see the land. That way you get yourself a nice tourism business going over there, and you don't have to worry about your security from Jordan or your security from Israel. And you don't have to mess with Jordan and Israel, because you are the Palestinians of the West Bank. And this is what you will go from here henceforward. Disengage yourself from the Palestinians from Gaza. They have to find out who they are and what they want to be. You guys already know that in the West Bank. And this is what I'm saying. It's up to the United Nations to come in here and thwart Iran's plan. Make Hamas a terrorist organization and forbid them from acting on their hate. Israel will stand down. They have no other things. It doesn't want any fights. It's got issues of its own within its own country. Israel has to decide what it is to be Israeli, and that's not war and fight the Arabs. Since 1948, it has never found out what it is to be an Israeli. You guys haven't found out what it is to be a Palestinian, because you lived under a mandate from the League of Nations that was given to Britain after the Ottoman Empire fell in 1918. And from 1921 to 1948, you lived in that mandate. And from 48 to now, you were in no man's land, West Bank and Gaza. So instead of being, how would you say, pro-Israel and anti-Israel, pro-Palestinian and anti-Palestinian here, you people that are marching to hell and beating up the Jews and beating up the Muslims, the Palestinians, you guys should sit down and say, they have a right to their own self-determination, we don't. And the Palestinians themselves should be looking at this and say, what do we want? The West Bank wants something different than the Gaza Strip. The West Bank has something different to offer to the world than Gaza. Gaza doesn't know what it wants because it's been under Hamas and before that under the PLO for so long, they don't understand. The West Bank understood, especially after what happened in 1970 when a lot of them got thrown out from Jordan. That's an Arab state throwing an Arab person out. Does that tell you something, Palestinians from the West Bank? When the state like Jordan throws you out, and King Hussein was a interesting character. Was he all perfect? No. But as far as a leader from an Arab state, he bent over backwards from 1967 to 70 for you guys. Because I used to read what was going on there. And he bent over backwards. And you guys took everything that he gave you and kicked him left and right. And he had no choice in 1970 but throw you guys out. I don't blame him. I don't blame King Abdullah for not wanting you back in either. Jordan has developed into a nice state. But then again, it's right cross between a rock and a hard place, because Jordan, you got Iran that wants their hands on the border with Saudi Arabia here that Jordan's got. You got the Palestinians who want to create havoc with Jordan. And you got the Israelis that want to keep Jordan as a peaceful ally. Jordan's been nice to Israel, and Israel's been nice to Jordan. There's been no shooting there. Same with Egypt, although Egypt and Israel's peace treaty has been a little bit more on the itchy side. But, hey, isn't all treaties that way? Look at the Americans' treaty with China, as they call it, the armistice over in North Korea. It's had its ups and its downs, and Kim Jong-un is doing the best to make it down. This is your favorite alien and Bubba saying, how about still stopping the stupid hatred on all sides here and letting those people get together? The West Bank has a true purpose. The guys in Gaza have to decide, do they want Hamas there or not? And what do they want Gaza to be? That's what they got to decide. But you can't put the Palestinians in the West Bank and the Palestinians in Gaza together. That's like putting East Pakistan and West Pakistan together, and look what happened there. You have hostile territory between those two, same as you had hostile territory between East and West Pakistan. This is your favorite alien and Bubba. Think about it. If you have anything but watermelons for brains, Americans, and Palestinians and Jewish Israelis, think about it. Good day.